Winterfell is not governed solely by the proclamations of its lords, but by a quieter, older set of understandings that pass like breath in cold air between its people. One of the strangest among these is the law of silence during snowfall. When the first flakes begin to fall, no one raises their voice above a murmur, as if the snow itself demands reverence. It is said that to shout during snowfall is to invite misfortune, though no one can recall precisely when or how this belief began. The silence is not enforced by guards or punishments, but by something deeper, an inherited unease. Even the most unruly children find themselves whispering without being told, their instincts bending to the rhythm of the storm. Conversations become brief and deliberate, as though every word must justify its existence in the frozen air. In the great hall, where laughter and feasting would normally echo against stone walls, a snowfall transforms the atmosphere entirely. Cups are raised quietly, benches creak under shifting weight, and even the crackling of the hearth seems subdued. Visitors often find this unsettling, mistaking it for mourning rather than tradition. Some claim the law stems from ancient times, when the North believed that spirits traveled with the snow, listening for disrespect. Others suggest it is simply a habit born from survival, a way to remain alert to danger when visibility is low. Regardless of its origin, no one dares to test it openly. Those who have broken the silence speak of an immediate and inexplicable chill, deeper than the winter itself. A shout, once released, seems to hang in the air unnaturally long, as if the world refuses to absorb it. The speaker often falls quiet afterward, unable to explain the sudden weight pressing on their chest. Travelers passing through Winterfell during a storm often carry this law with them, whispering miles beyond the castle walls before realizing they are no longer bound by it. Yet many continue the practice, unable to shake the feeling that the snow remembers. There are rare moments when the silence is broken intentionally, usually in times of dire need. A warning cry, sharp and urgent, cuts through the falling snow like a blade. In such cases, the law yields, not out of forgiveness, but necessity, and afterward, the quiet returns twice as heavy. Elders in Winterfell speak of winters when the silence was ignored too often, followed by seasons of hardship and loss. These stories are told not as threats, but as reminders, woven into the identity of the North as firmly as the cold itself. Curiously, animals within the castle grounds seem to follow the same rule. Dogs cease barking, ravens lower their calls, and even the horses grow restless but subdued. Whether trained or instinctual, their behavior reinforces the sense that the law extends beyond human understanding. In the end, the law of silence is less about fear and more about respect. Respect for the winter, for the land, and for the unseen forces that may or may not exist. It is one of the many ways Winterfell reminds its people that they are not masters of their world, but participants in something far older and far colder. Another peculiar law of Winterfell dictates that no one may retrace their exact footsteps in freshly fallen snow before the next sunrise. Once a path is made, it must remain untouched, as if each set of tracks tells a story that cannot be rewritten. This law is followed with an almost ritualistic precision, even when it proves inconvenient. At first glance, the rule seems impractical. A servant crossing the courtyard must find a new route, rather than stepping back along the same path. Guards on patrol circle wide arcs instead of doubling back, their movements creating intricate patterns across the snow-covered grounds. The reasoning behind this law is shrouded in mystery. Some believe that footsteps are a record of intention, and to erase or overwrite them is to confuse fate itself. Others argue that it prevents unseen forces from following the same path back to the castle, as though repetition invites unwanted company. Children are taught the rule early, often through games that challenge them to move forward without retracing their steps. What begins as play becomes habit, and habit becomes law. By the time they are grown, the practice feels as natural as breathing in the cold air. Visitors frequently break this law unknowingly, only to be gently corrected by those who notice. There is no punishment, but there is always a subtle tension afterward, as if the balance of something invisible has been disturbed. The tracks themselves, once altered, seem to lose their clarity, becoming muddled and indistinct. Hunters and scouts take this law beyond the walls of Winterfell, applying it in the wild, where it becomes both superstition and strategy. By avoiding their own tracks, they reduce the risk of ambush, whether by man or beast. Over time, practicality and belief have become inseparable. There are tales of individuals who ignored the law repeatedly, only to find themselves lost in familiar places. Paths they knew well seemed to twist and shift, leading them in circles until exhaustion forced them to stop. Whether coincidence or something stranger, these stories are told with quiet seriousness. During festivals or gatherings, the snow becomes a canvas of countless intersecting paths. Yet even then, the rule is maintained. People weave around one another carefully, creating a complex tapestry of movement that is never undone. By morning, the ground tells the story of the night in perfect detail. When the sun rises and the snow begins to soften, the law dissolves with it. Tracks fade, edges blur, and the ground resets, ready to accept new stories. Only then may people walk freely, without concern for where they have stepped before. In essence, the law of returning footsteps is a reminder that every action leaves a mark, however temporary. In Winterfell, even something as simple as walking becomes an act of intention, shaped by the belief that the past should be preserved, not retraced. As the pale light of day fades behind the walls of Winterfell, another curious and deeply rooted law comes into effect. No new flame may be lit once dusk has settled. Fires that already burn may be maintained, fed carefully with wood and tended with patience, but the striking of flint to create a fresh flame is strictly avoided until morning returns. The rule seems simple, yet it shapes the entire rhythm of life within the castle as darkness approaches. This law transforms dusk into a moment of quiet preparation. Servants move swiftly through corridors before the last light disappears, ensuring that hearths are properly stoked and torches are already aglow. There's a sense of urgency, but never panic, as though everyone understands that the transition from day to night must be respected, not resisted. The origins of this law are debated in hushed conversations by the firelight it preserves. Some claim it is tied to ancient fears, that kindling a new flame in darkness draws the attention of things better left unseen. Others believe it to be a symbolic act, honoring the dying light of the sun by refusing to challenge the night too abruptly. In practice, the rule fosters a strange intimacy among the people of Winterfell. Families gather closer to existing fires, sharing warmth and stories rather than dispersing into separate, newly lit spaces. Shadows stretch longer, and the flicker of a single flame becomes more meaningful, more deliberate, as though each fire holds a fragment of the day that has passed. Those unfamiliar with the custom often find themselves caught unprepared. A traveler reaching for flint after dusk is usually stopped with a quiet but firm warning. There's no anger in the correction, only a seriousness that suggests the act carries weight beyond simple tradition. There are whispered tales of nights when the law was ignored, when someone struck a spark in defiance or ignorance. In these stories, the flame burned strangely, too bright, too still, or casting shadows that do not match their source. Whether these accounts are truth or embellishment, they are told often enough to discourage experimentation. Interestingly, the law does not forbid light itself, only its creation. Moonlight spilling through narrow windows is welcomed, as is the steady glow of embers that have endured since before dusk. It is the act of beginning anew in darkness that is avoided, as if creation itself belongs to the daylight hours. Guards patrolling the walls adhere to the rule with particular care. Their torches are lit well before sunset and carried throughout the night, without being extinguished. Should one go out, it is relit from another, never from a fresh spark, maintaining an unbroken chain of flame that stretches across the castle. As the night deepens, the effect of this law becomes almost meditative. The limited number of fires creates pockets of warmth, surrounded by vast stretches of shadow, encouraging stillness and reflection. Conversations soften, movement slow, and the castle seems to breathe in a slower, more deliberate rhythm. When dawn finally breaks, the restriction lifts quietly, without announcement. New fires may be lit again, and with them comes a subtle sense of renewal. In this way, the law of unlit flames at dusk reinforces a cycle. Day gives way to night, and night yields once more to day, without interruption, without defiance, and always with respect for the balance that governs Winterfell.